This is Brian with King Grizzly, and today we're looking at the third Elementor Pro widget in our training series. So we're up to slides. We've done post, portfolio, and today we're going to look at the slides widget. So I'll drag that onto my page. And it comes with three slides just sort of preloaded. One of the first things I'd probably do is click on the section and make it full width. That tends to be sort of the typical look people have, is full width. And interestingly enough, it looks buggy here on the right. Like you can see the beginning of the next slide. If you update and refresh, that'll go away. And you might even consider clearing out the padding on the column here by clicking on it, go into advanced and zeroing out the padding. So now we have a nice, like a 100% wide slide. And you can see by resizing my screen, it fixed that little display error in the preview mode here. So what can we do with slides? We'll want to click back on the widget. And what we see here is these are our slides. So I can click on one. It'll actually change to that slide so I can see what I'm working with. We can control the background. So I could set an image. I'll just grab something random. We can choose how we want to size the image. Cover generally makes sense. It'll make sure the image covers the whole background. If I hit contain, it's going to actually fit the image to the space, which if you have a predictable space size, that could work, but cover tends to be the best setting. Color is the background color. Now we may want a background overlay. If I turn that on, we can actually darken the slide down so I could actually see the text, whereas before I could not. We can also, this is just, these are the slides here. If I look down here, I can control the height of the whole slider. And actually this vertical height setting is a good one because if you do a pixel height, it means it's going to try to take that pixel height on all devices. I mean, we could change it so like I can make it, on mobile I can make it a pixel height that's not quite as tall. I like to use vertical height, so it's sort of like a percentage height of the screen. Just there's a slider here, so there's 35% the height of my viewport. If I keep going to 50, what's nice about this is if my screen isn't as tall as this, the image will just the height keeps changing. It stays at 70% of the vertical height. I like that, especially on phones. So I tend to go with vertical height. Let's go back to our slide and see what other options we have. We can use a Ken Burns effect. That's sort of that famous PBS effect where you just have a static photo, but it feels a little more dynamic because it's moving. So you can zoom it in or out. It's kind of cool. I think that's a newer effect here for the slides. I can go to content. I can set the slide heading, so test slide. I could change the excerpt. I could change the button text. If I don't want a button, I can just zero that out. We can set the link for the button, so whatever you want this to link to. And if we click on the little gear icon, we can actually choose if we want to open that in a new window, and if we also want to add the no follow property for those of you who are SEO diehards. And then we have some styling options. Now it can take sort of the global ones that we can set on this tab here, or if I click custom, I can override per slide. So if for some reason I really needed my text to be on the right on a slide, I could do that. For now, I'll turn that off, but we can control slide styling individually if we would like. Under slider options here, we can control things like the navigation. So it says arrows and dots. You can't see my dots right now. They're at the bottom. They're really dark. I'd have to go over to style, navigation, and then I could set a color on my dots and arrows. So like what if we go with white? Now you can see them down there. They're pretty small. Maybe make them a little bigger. You can see them at the bottom. We could also choose to put them outside, in which case a darker color would work. Or we can just get rid of them. And to get rid of them, we go back over to Content, Slider Options, and we choose our navigation scheme. So this is arrows and dots. If you just want arrows or dots or none, you can control that here. So maybe I don't want those dots, just the arrows. Do I want this to autoplay? I can choose yes or no. Do I want the slides to pause when someone hovers over them with their mouse? I can toggle that on or off. And also, do I want an infinite loop, right? Like the slides will just keep going through. And I can set the transition from a slide to a fade. I kind of like a fade. And I can set the speed. This is in milliseconds. So there are some places online you can get a conversion for milliseconds. But just know that you probably want to do numbers like 7,500 versus 75 because that would be way too fast. And you can choose which way the content animates. So I could have this text sort of animate to the left, zoom, so we can see there's a zoom. I typically don't really necessarily like my content animating, but that's not too bad. It kind of draws the eye. So those are most of the slider options we have here. If we go back to the global styles, now we can set the content width, which is nice because like this excerpt text here is kind of long. I maybe don't want it to be so long, so I can limit the width by percentage or pixels, which I like. You can also set a padding on that. We can position the text vertically, left, right. We could text a line. So if you, for some reason, needed to do this, we could. And you could see how the padding would be useful here. So maybe I'd want some padding over there. If my design had more like images on the right. But this one doesn't, so I'll probably just go ahead and center it, turn off that padding. And then we can just go through and style the title. Maybe I want to make it bigger. We can adjust things like on the description. If I go to typography, maybe make a bigger line height so that breathes a little more. Same thing, I can fiddle around with my type size. Until I eventually get something that I like. Font weight. And then the button itself, we can style the button. There's some defaults for sizing here. We can change the color, the border width, text color, background color. We do have some control over hover state. So if I wanted to, I don't like a border. If I hover, I could just change the background on hover to like a white. Maybe the text would stay blue. So now that's kind of nice. And then any styling I want to do on my arrows here. If I had the dots turned on, they'd show up. But I control the size there, the color, and whether I want them inside or outside. Since I have a full width design, I want them inside. But if you had a sort of a box width, you could put them outside of that. So that's really how the slider works. We can go to tablet as well and control styling on that. So you remember the height here. I could set that vertical height. Maybe this is taller than I wanted for a tablet, so I can just set that here and go to my style settings and make any needed adjustments here. Maybe this font, this heading font's too big, so I'll just make it smaller here. Not 21 rem though, so I could fiddle around with that. Yeah, so it's a nice little slider. Pretty easy to use, easy to style at different screen sizes. What you may have noticed is I don't see a way to put video in here. We can do an image. We can do a background overlay. You can even do a blend mode, sort of like Adobe Photoshop has. But what we don't have is the ability to put in video. So if you need to do that, you're probably going to have to look for a different slider solution. I'm not aware of any workarounds at this point, for slipping a template in there or anything like that. I mean, there might be some crafty thing you could do in this description field, but not that I've seen. And I also don't see a way to put in, say, an image in here. We have a background image. So it's a relatively simple slider, but it does a really good job. And I think, yeah, it'll be useful for a lot of websites. So hopefully that was helpful. Please consider subscribing to this YouTube channel if you want to learn more about Elementor and Elementor Pro, and we'll just keep rolling out some learning resources. Thanks.